I'll start from kudos here. You come from Turku. So it used to be the capital of Finland. So how are things done differently in Turku than in Helsinki? Is there something?
Well, I don't believe so, really. But you know what I said, that I don't even think about where I'm coming. You know, it doesn't matter anything to anybody out there in the international market. I mean, what you said about the connecting to the nature and things like, I was thinking that is exactly what we have in our office. We have pieces of grey wood and, you know, a lot of different, we call them treasures. When we go out to the woods and we find something, everybody brings something to our office and we have like these kind of treasures there. So maybe that's different. Maybe we are a little bit more connected to the nature in Turku than here in a big city like Helsinki.
Well, I asked that because I was born in Tampere, but I have lived most of my life in Töölö, and then Töölö again is same different thing than if you go a couple of blocks. So I feel like I have two passports. Because I feel that Tampere and Töölö, they are quite different things. So I then have something to choose from. So I can switch like nationality, even though it's not actually. But they say that in genetics that people from East Finland compared to people in West Finland, they are as different as the Finnish people are from the German people in genetics. So there's something in that. So Kauri, do you have something that you are strong in something because of the another culture, and then you are strong because of the another culture, and then you can choose? Because like if I'm with the heavy metal friend, so I can easily choose to take the Tampere kind of person of me and use that. And then I'm with the design university people, I can use the Töölö personality a bit better.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think I definitely understand what you're saying, but I think because I'm such a mix of so many different cultures and languages, like I literally am sometimes a chameleon when I meet people from a certain place and you connect with, oh, you've been there for school, or oh, I've worked there, and you know, this is how it is, or we eat this and that. So I have like 100 different hats that I can put on, and sometimes I choose when to exercise that hat. Like if I'm sitting on a train and then there's this poor person who doesn't speak the language, and I think to myself, well, how long do I wait before I rescue them in that situation? Or so it's a bit of a unique angle that I have, because I have so many versions of home. Whether it's like, you know, the film that you showed about the soil and the connection, it's like, you know, food and places and just the smell. I mean, I come from Canada, and Finland reminds me of Canada. So it's like, you know, you can be surprised what you connect to, even though you've never been there before. There's still this universal connection to things that sometimes we don't understand, but that all connect us. So, yeah.
And well, this in a way I feel boring question to ask. So how much does Switzerland differ from Germany? But of course, Switzerland differs from Switzerland also, because more than from, well, cities in Switzerland differ from each other more than Basel differs from München.
Very much. Just to give you one example, I mean, I live in Basel, which is just across the border from Germany, and there I have the feeling that it's still quite open. But I had a meeting once with when I moved there with the guy from the insurance, and he was telling me that he originally was from Basel. Now he lives near Lucerne, but he used to live in Zurich. And he said when he was in Zurich back in the days, he had only German friends because the Zurich people wouldn't connect with him. So that's the differences in Switzerland. So you go half an hour and people don't speak to each other. No, it's not like this. Because I think Switzerland is a very unique place in the sense that there's a very huge variety. I mean, there are 4 national languages, just that, so they can't even really, like, a lot of people can't really communicate together, but they have one really good common sense, and that's being Swiss. And that's that's actually a common ground where they all reconnect together, and this is what they got in common. And I think it's also one of the reasons why it's been like a very peaceful country, like always like very neutral, but it's part of their culture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same with religion, you know. It doesn't matter what you look like, but you believe in this thing. They believe in Switzerland, and then it's what keeps them together. Well, I met a colleague, interior architect, and he was in Bern, living in Bern. So then I asked that, so what do you do? And so you work a lot in Zurich, so do you go to Zurich like every day? And he was like, I only work in Bern. And it was only working in Bern. It's like in Finland that I only work in Tampere or in Turku. So, but it could be, you were up in the north, and we were talking about it before this, and I said that I would like to live there, but many Finnish people would like to live there, but they actually don't. So there's this infrastructure thing and so on. It's dark there. I don't mind, but well, people need the sun, so obviously it's somewhat nicer here. And I'm working now with an architect that lives in Pudasjärvi, and we were deciding to where to meet, and he sent a message that Helsinki is so far away from everything, so let's meet in Pudasjärvi. Well, we did, and it's nice there. And you can easily go there. And the train connects, Finland to Finland, but not with Europe like in Switzerland. And you said that Canada is a bit same that it is in Finland, but I met these Canadian people and they were furious about how they are always, people think of them as Yankees. And they disliked America and the United States, and they were furious about it. We are not the United States. So now you can say what's like good about Canada when you are a child, not a designer yet, but you are digging into the soil. How did it taste? What did you bring with you from there?
Well, definitely some sour grapes from being kind of like the little brother to the US. So in a way, Finland is a bit similar to how they feel in relation to Sweden. That's how Canadians kind of feel as the underdogs to the US. They're always stronger, sell more, bigger, whatever, right? And we're always getting things second best. Our radio stations had a rule with every fourth song has to be Canadian. Otherwise everything would be American, you know, things like that. So we grew up a little bit with this underdog mentality, but yet, you know, there is still this tie, like we say, that does bond together, you know, through culture and things like that. And what I find remarkable is that sort of toughness and that sort of like, the hockey culture is here, you know, the fishing, the great wild outdoors, like this sort of roughness, like that's how I know nature, you know. And now I live in Holland where everything's manicured, little gnomes in garden centers, right? So it is quite a contrast, but there are a lot of similarities, you know. If you look hard enough and if you look with open eyes, you'll see there's a lot of similarities everywhere in the world.
Yeah, and as a Finnish person, it's always good to remind yourself there is nature also outside of Finland. It's one of those things we have not branded yet. So, and there are bigger trees in Canada, and there are bigger wolves and so on. So it's not that the wilderness is only in the Finnish people. Yeah, but not in the Netherlands. That's right for sure. And I was talking about the hierarchy, and you've been traveling in Dubai and all those other places. Then now the new China could be also there. But like I said, that hierarchy is a problem in China. Maybe not so big problem here. But how has there been any problems, you talking to a wrong person, like an hour, and then you notice that this was not the person you should contact.
Yeah. Well, in Dubai, it's so different there that you have been in these kind of situations a little bit, that you have to be careful. You have to have a connecting person always when you talk to the people in Dubai, and that was something what you had to learn, that you have to have this middleman always. When you are setting up a meeting with an Arab, you have to have this middleman or middlewoman. Like when I met the princess, you know, we went back and forth like maybe for a month, that how we're gonna do and where she's gonna pick me up, and you know, then they took me to the palace and I saw all these guards and everything, and you know, it felt really odd, but she was inviting me to her home. So then they kept me waiting there for like maybe 45 minutes. I was alone and looking like, is anybody coming? What's gonna happen? And you know, it was like an outside terrace. And then somebody came and put some smell on top of me and, you know, prepared me. And I was, of course, I was there like, okay, what? And something to drink, of course. And then she came with flip-flops. And I was like, what? Okay. And sat next to me and was staring at me like maybe it was 15 minutes. She was looking at my energy and, you know, do I want to talk to you or not? And, you know, didn't say a word. And you know how we Finns are good with that in elevators. But in that kind of situation, you were a little bit scared, like, oh my God, very intensive look. And then she started to talk and took me to the places and was asking me to design like a floating atelier for her. So then I understood that, you know, she let me take some measurements, pictures, whatever, you know, she wanted. She had some ideas what she wanted to have in there and what she wanted to keep from the house. So, yeah, the world is full of surprises. You have to be prepared for everything. That can I say. So maybe the Finnish mentality is good because, you know how we are here. Like last weekend I was fishing and it was a wonderful weather, and now suddenly maybe tomorrow it's very cold and I cannot do any of these kind of activities. So we are prepared for that.
Yeah, there's a word called hötkyilemättömyys.
Yes, exactly. We take it easy. Yeah. I don't know if that answered really your question, but anyway.
Well, there's a positive answer, and of course, you obviously met the right person. But the thing about first looking in the eye and sensing the other person, and you were talking about the space, and then we have like 5 senses, but then there's this 6th, which is our background. So because everybody relates to space very differently. Your girlfriend, like you said, probably was working in a more boring place. So that was like the inspiration for her at Vitra. Of course, it's a nice place, Vitra also. But I was saying about this flexible office and everybody there. So we have this, so it should be like individual. We are individuals put there, but we are not asked, do we want to be individuals in the space? Because most people, they want to sit where they sit every day, and they would not like to hear other people talk, for instance. So that's why there's this innovation called walls and doors on the walls. So it would improve those persons' work culture. I have had these discussions a couple of weeks back with a 65-year-old colleague who was saying, and that person has a very high voice, and so on. So do you see this trend coming about this innovation with the walls and doors? Perhaps have you seen it somewhere? Now we want this.
I guess we experience it all the time, and I've heard this not for just like older people, but also from younger generations, that it's something that I guess has to do, as you were saying, like with your background and your experience. And usually you need people to understand space by experience. So they have to know that it can work differently. You can explain that as much as you want, because you will always go back to what you know, what you feel secure with, what you feel familiar with, and then maybe it's the door, maybe it's the wall. So it's really about a lot of communication, of giving people the help to change. So it's really about changing and learning. And I mean, we're facing a lot, like I think, a time that I was saying this, yes, 2 days ago, that I always have the feeling that the last time I really learned was back at the university, where you really focused on learning. And nowadays, you don't really give yourself the time, but you're constantly learning. And in this fast-changing world, you should put much, much more effort into the learning on how to deal with those things. And we were talking about, and I was giving you just like the example of the VR and how that's, and artificial intelligence, and how that's actually going to change the world. And I've noticed that I know it's changing, but I don't really learn about it. And there's so many constant things happening but I think we have the responsibility to also be aware of those things, to learn from it, be there, because future generations are going to ask us, like, why did those things happen? And you were there. Why didn't you do anything? And it's the same thing when we talk about space. I mean, we're trying to find answers. I'm not saying that those solutions are perfect. I mean, it's an answer that we found that might work for a certain amount of time, and then will change again. And maybe it's new adaptations, it's different people, it's a different culture that we want to establish, and it's different, like, let's say, intellect or a background from people moving into the space, and we will have to evolve. So it's not it's not a thing that we build and it's like this forever.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I went a little bit around.
No. And Kari, like you said that we have lost the game, and he said maybe, but then we, at least if we have lost the game, so with the ecology and stuff, so at least we have to be able to tell our children and why and how and why we did not do anything. But you're trying in your work to at least anyhow give some solutions. And you were talking about crisis. So do you have this personal crisis while you work with brands? So in a way, you work with the devil, in a way.
You can say that. It's incredibly humbling to work with people that are also fighting against the tide of change, right? Like they're usually, when companies are faced with a need for a facelift or a need for a rebrand, it means that they're under dire circumstances. Otherwise, they wouldn't change, right? So you're often working with clients that are already stressed, are already fearful, are already like, we already can't risk to lose all this, and that's where all the fun stuff comes out and all the stress. But indeed, I feel like, if there was more of a culture of embracing change, and letting go of what just isn't serving you anymore, and striving, forward, then I don't think these things would be as difficult. I think people are just faced with the fears of change and what that means financially. Will the boards accept this? And then you've got multiple layers of decision bodies, and it gets very complicated very quickly. So again, a lot of the innovation, a lot of the sort of out-of-the-box thinking to, transform doesn't actually happen because you've got too many people afraid of change, even though they're facing potential bankruptcy or whatever it is. They'd rather just shut down and start somewhere else than to actually just change what they know and love or thought they knew. So it's an interesting psychological experiment every time we engage with a new client, and to build that trust and to make sort of new connections, and again, like to foster a sense of learning or what's possible if we do take on these risks together. And you really, and that's very unique when it does happen. And when it does, then it's magic. But, if people aren't ready for it, then usually it fails, to be honest. But, it's these gambles that we're in, and I pursue because, you do get that magic every now and then with that great client, and those are worth the perseverance and all the failures to get to, so.
Yeah, you said about letting go, and making a change. I think the best example about this is the tobacco companies. Like in Finland, we have Amer, who was responsible for all the tobacco in Finland, and then they changed into sports, and now they are one of the biggest companies in Finland. So they actually made the big step or leap towards, and also towards something better, more ethical. And Sweden also tried to do the same, but in a way more hypocritical way, because the government sold Absolut vodka. They said that a government cannot have a booze brand because booze is not good for you. And at the same time, they still sell weapons, and the government owns part of that business. So it's always also the perspective from where you look at things. But have you, like Viktor Papanek said, that when he works with companies, so he made one effort with what the customer asked him to do, and then with his own time and money made another suggestion that was more ecological, and also presented that to the customer. So you can choose A or B. A is good and B is good, but it's also good for the environment. That was quite inspirational when I was a student, when I read this from the Viktor Papanek's groundbreaking, at least in the 70s, book. And because there's always the knowledge that you have to do something differently, but there are not enough wise men to say how to do it. But what is in your, I will still be with Kari, in your personal life, well, have you let go of something that was hard and then you actually made a change in your life?
Yes. And I think the letting go actually helped me do this talk, right? So, I think, like I was saying, if things go awry and your whole world turns upside down, then there's just no turning back to what was before. And you do have a chance to either fall down and never get up, and stay there until you figure stuff out, or you can, get the hell out and start living the life that it should have been. Because in a way, when you have nothing more to lose, you have everything to gain. And in those moments, they can be moments of rebirth or just sort of a new energy to find out, who you are, despite all the destruction, despite all the pain, and just push through and be like, well, what actually belongs on my soul or not? And you get to choose how you move forward, and every destruction is the same, right? Whether it's in a company or whatever, you can salvage the good and leave the bad behind, and that's kind of the magic of failures, right? We can't, I always say that, in schools or CVs or, when people are applying to jobs, it's not about what you've achieved or the successes really that I care about. It's It's actually how you failed and then what you did after you failed. Because that defines who you are as a person, you know. So indeed, personal things lead to, you know, a lot of turmoil. But from there comes courage and, you know, resilience to keep continuing forward in a stronger way, and use failures and use pain as a reminder of, you know, the importance of living your truth and to push forward, you know. A good example of this, you were talking about this guy who did the work on the side to say, you know, we'll just do this in parallel, because he was passionate, right? He was passionate about this, even though, you know, the client wouldn't pay for it, right? I mean, that's passion. And I mean, even with this Palace collection, we worked on it for a year without any kind of idea if it would ever launch. Or no reimbursement, 100% pure, our own initiative. I picked up the phone and I said, hey, what do you think of this? You know, and they were lovely enough people to work with us. And I remember meeting the first time for the factory visit, and the woman from the factory was like, hello, I'm Ulla, and your idea is not going to work, but you can come anyways. and you know, the rest is history, right? I mean, it's about putting yourself out there and just following through because of the passion, because of the belief that things can be done differently. Just because people haven't done it doesn't mean that it can't be done. So, but yeah.
And even if you can't do it, it can be done. Like this was one of the lines of Richard Branson. If you ask to do something you cannot do, say yes, but then learn while doing it. And you will also be giving same kind of this Rocky Road thing about the floating extension of a 7-star hotel. And we heard about a lot of hardship along the way, but technical hardship, that's another thing. You in a way understand that always in architecture there comes this conflict between, usually it is the lights, those elevate things, but mental hardship, that really makes you furious. Now we were talking about that people have a background and they start from there when they look at things, and then you are sitting in a meeting and the person who decides about your life in a way says that I do not like this because my grandmother, and then he goes on and so on. I had this kind of situations. So do you then, you don't say that forget your grandmother, but you say it in a more different way. But yeah, do you have some kind of recollection about these situations and how perhaps did you try? Because then you have to be very, very psychological about it, and you either have to say that it is cheaper to do it this way, then it works. But if it's not cheaper, then you have to be really psychological.
Well, I think we all have to do that kind of things almost every day. My tactic is that I try to, of course, convince even better that I understand that there is, like I had one client who absolutely hated this kind of color of wood, and the wife loved it. So, and then you are in between. The wife is whispering, I would like to have this the whole house, and the husband said, I really hate it because, sorry. So then you try to find some sort of compromise. But then the best thing is that if your client then later on is saying that actually this was my idea, that we did that, then you feel like, wow, and you don't care. You are not going to tell them that, do you remember how it went? But it's the nice feeling when you teach them something. And about this change and this kind of thing, I realized only now that I have always done this differently. You know, when I have 3 kids, when they were small, I never let anybody to sit in the kitchen table in the same seat. I always like, okay, mommy sits here now and you sit there and whatever. You can of course choose the seat. Same with the, like with my ex-husband on the bed. You usually have your own sides. I always, when I change the sheets, we change the sides, because I think we are so into routines in our lives that sometimes it's a good even to do these small things. And now it's nice to see how my kids are. They are very spontaneous and they don't even maybe realize that this is a change. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's in fact true. And they say that if you want to work your brain every day, so swap hands, like try to write with the left hand if you are working with the right hand. Always take a different road when you walk to your work and so on. So these things that you are doing with your home, so they prepare those children to the reality. So you never know, what seat you're gonna have to take. Well, I think now it's good to end this discussion to children, because they are the hope of the future. We have lost it, and well, we still can manage somehow. Yeah, and I would like to thank everybody for taking part by listening, because listening to other people, like, that's a real virtue in the world. And also, if you're coming to the gala tonight, so see you there. And if you are not coming, so next year, like I said, it's 150th birthday of Finnish interior architecture and furniture schooling, because of the Veistokoulu. And have a nice summer and so on. So, thank you.